What's up, fantasy football fans? Welcome to the Endgame. Big shout out to our Endgame community. Thanks for watching. As always, if you are a new viewer, welcome. And we're here to help you talk about tight ends because you know what? There's a lot of confusion once you get past those big three. Who do you draft? And that's why we're going to talk about our rankings, top 12 at tight end position in the preseason. Yes, these are going to change because there's still a lot of preseason left in training camp. But right now, I'll give you an idea of where we have these guys ranked. So the big three, we've talked about big three at tight end for the last couple of years, but the big three itself has changed. Chris, the big three this year is got to include, of course, Travis Kelce. There's nothing to talk about there. Darren Waller and George Kittle. We both have Waller over Kittle. Do you think there's a chance that Kittle overtakes Waller this year, though? Because sometimes we see Kittle drafted ahead of him.
Is there a chance? Sure, but it's hard for me to put Kittle ahead of a guy, had 108 receptions last year. Darren Waller is basically the Raiders' number one wide receiver. And, talk about Henry Ruggs all you want. Talk about Bryan Edwards breakout all you want. They're not going to supplant Darren Waller as Derek Carr's number one target. And as much as I like Kittle, and Kittle's a great player, and I think Kittle's going to have a great season, he's competing with Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. So he's not going to get the targets that Darren Waller is going to get. So for me, that puts Darren Waller over George Kittle.
Yeah, the thing is, we know exactly what we're going to get from Waller because really not much has changed in that offense, especially the passing game. Derek Carr is definitely going to look toward Waller first as often as possible. With Kittle, we still don't know the quarterback situation. When is Lance going to come in? There's just enough uncertainty. Kittle has a hard time staying healthy. But also, George Kittle, you might not realize, just doesn't score a lot of touchdowns, and he never has. So that's what keeps him there at number three. But we both have the exact same order there. We got Kelce, and then Waller, and then Kittle. I know we've talked about this before, too. Are you pulling the trigger on a tight end early and securing this position, which has a lot of question marks? Or do you think you might as well spend that pick on a running back or something else early and then wait to grab one of these other guys?
Well, it really depends on league format, and the shallower your league, meaning the less players in your league and the less players you start, the more valuable this elite tight end becomes, right? So if you're in your standard, 10 team, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, 1 tight end league, I think you have to get one of these guys. Like you almost have to get one of these guys because you get such a massive advantage at the position, and you can more than make up for it by waiting on your running backs or your wide receivers. I'm not saying draft these guys like with the first pick, but when these guys are available, like Kelce in the first round, Waller, Kittle in the second or third round, I think you've got to take them because you can still get a very good wide receiver or running back later to fill out your lineup. Whereas if you're in like a 14 or even a 12 team or a 14 team league where you start, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 2 flexes and a tight end, now it's not as important because what you make up for, the difference you get at tight end is not enough to make up for the difference you're going to have, your flex or your wide receiver 3 or that. So it really comes down to league settings. But I say for most people, they probably play in a 10 or 12 team league and they probably play 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, 1 tight end. In that case, I think you should do whatever you can to get one of these guys. I'm not saying like draft them over, studs, but when these guys, are there, I think you should take them.
Yeah, I find myself, I've said this before, I have a hard time, spending a first round pick on a tight end, even if it's Travis Kelce, just because then, you're passing up one of those stud running backs or wide receivers, and that kind of affects your roster construction. But I love in the late second, sometimes you see in the early to mid third round, you get a guy like Waller, that's great value. And then you can get another receiver to kind of fill the void later on. But let's move on, talk about our next group of tight ends. I guess you can call this tier 2. I'm glad to see you have TJ Hawkinson number 4 like I do because I really think he's a tight end that you want this year. I'm targeting him basically everywhere I can. I really think he's going to lead the team in receiving in basically every category. But moving on here, I have Noah Fant next at number 5. Mark Andrews number 7, and no, that's 6. I have Mark Andrews number 6. And you also have him even lower. I thought I was low on Andrews. A lot of people still view Andrews as a top 5 tight end, and we don't. So why is everybody stuck in the fact that Andrews should be in that top 5?
Because he had that monster season a couple of years ago where he caught a bunch of touchdowns. I mean, really, that's it. And also because what other tight ends are there, right? There's such a huge drop at the tight end position. But I'm definitely worried for Mark Andrews. They brought in 3 wide receivers this offseason. And whatever you think of those 3 wide receivers, Sammy Watkins, Rashad Bateman, and Tylan Wallace, they brought them in. And they brought them in for a reason. And it's not because they want to target the tight end more, right? They're going to try to throw more, but they're going to try to throw more to these wideouts. Mark Andrews, he lives off touchdowns. He's not like, at least with TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant, maybe even Kyle Pitts, these guys are probably going to have a decent amount of targets this year just because of their role in the offense. Mark Andrews won't. This isn't a guy who's going to have, 100 targets, 80 targets, 90 targets, right? He's just not in this offense. So he's a very touchdown dependent guy. And again, based on the fact that they brought in these extra weapons in the passing game, I think that's going to hurt him. I'm not going to rank him outside my top 10, but it wouldn't surprise me if he finished outside the top 10 this year.
Oh, I wouldn't go that low. I mean, I still have him as a starting tight end. I think he's still going to be one of the main targets in Baltimore just because, again, we're talking about rookie receivers, talking about Sammy Watkins, who I don't think much of anymore at this point. But still, there's enough competition that we don't think that Andrews is going to be one of those elite tight end options. But still, I think he's going to have the edge over those guys like Dallas Goedert. I had as a top 5 tight end, and I'll tell you, I just slid him down in my rankings because could have sworn Zach Ertz was going to go somewhere, anywhere. And for some reason, he isn't. I guess the market just kind of dried up on him. I think that was misplayed by him and his agent. But anyways, if Zach Ertz is still there, you just can't have Goddard as high. So I know I have him down there and you do too. But then Kyle Pitts, talk about that. I have him just at the bottom of this tier. I have him as a TE8. You have him as a TE5. Look, I'm not sold on the fact that a rookie who's 20 years old is going to all of a sudden become an elite option at the position. I know there's not a lot of other options there with Julio Jones gone, but still, I think it's going to take a little bit of time. But you really think Pitts is a top 5 tight end?
I mean, this may be too high. I may be getting sucked into the Kyle Pitts hype a little too much. But here's the thing. All you really need to be a top 5 tight end is the potential to have 60 plus catches and more than 5 touchdowns. If you can do that, if you have that potential, you have top 5 upside because that's really all you need in this tight end terrible landscape that we play in fantasy football. So do I think Kyle Pitts can do that? Yes. I probably, thinking about it now, I probably should have Noah Fant ahead of him. Probably should drop him down to number 6. But look, I know everybody loves Russell Gage. There's a chance that Kyle Pitts can be Matt Ryan's number 2 target this year, right? Like Russell Gage isn't some incredible wide receiver like Calvin Ridley. Is he good? Sure, he's good. He's fine, but he's not like a Calvin Ridley alpha type wide receiver. Why can't Kyle Pitts be the number 2 target on this team? And can he hit that 70 catch mark? Maybe the 6-7 touchdown mark? That's all it would really take. So yeah, maybe I probably should have had Fant ahead of him because Fant's my guy. But saying that guy's a top 5 tight end isn't really saying much.
Yeah, look, I mean, 70 catches, I don't think he gets that. Could he be the number 2 guy in Atlanta? Definitely, but I guess it just depends what you think of this offense. I see that whole team kind of on a slow, steady decline. And so my confidence isn't there. I'd rather have a guy like Andrews, who at least I feel good about his target share. And then let's go to the next group here. You're talking about waiting at tight end. If you're not going to take one of these guys and you're just going to wait till the very end of your draft to get your starter, you know what? That's fine because one of these guys might pop. A lot of times these undrafted guys like Logan Thomas and Robert Tonyan last year wind up being weekly starters by midseason. Now, here's where we differ. We have quite a few names that are different in this group. Tyler Higbee, I'll admit that I moved him up quite a bit because of the Cam Akers news. Yeah, I do think they're going to have to pass the ball more. I think Higbee is a solid, if not exciting option here. Irv Smith, and I have next. I was more excited before they kind of said, look, he's not going to all of a sudden see a huge jump in targets, but I think he's going to do better than last year, and I think he could be a top 10 tight end, which is why I have him in my top 10. I still have Logan Thomas there. I notice you don't. I'm surprised that you don't have him at all. Look, I know he's not going to do what he did last year, but there's still not a lot of other receivers in Washington to compete with him, so that's why I still feel like he's that kind of safe, low-end tight end one that you can depend on because I mean, after Terry McLaurin, don't you think he could be the second option? Oh, I guess Curtis Samuel's there now. But still, this is a team that doesn't have a lot of depth at receiver.
No, I'm 100%. Look, Great story. Happy for the guy. But can somebody please show me in the history of the NFL a tight end who bounced from team to team, did almost nothing his whole career, then through circumstances that were completely out of his control, had one nice year and then finished his career like that? I mean, I can't think of anybody. I think that was a total 1 year wonder. I'm completely out on Logan Thomas this year, to be honest.
All right, and then I'm surprised you're not out on Evan Ingram. Been bashing him all off season, but you have him in your top 10. I mean, what happened to the Daniel Jones lack of accuracy? All the competition here brought in with him, Barkley coming back, right? They drafted Tony. You know that you really think Ingram has enough left in him after last year? And talk about a disappointing year. Yeah, it was disappointing because he seemed to drop more passes than he caught. I mean, but you still have him there as a potential top 10 tight end.
Okay, I don't think I've bashed Evan Ingram this year. I've bashed Daniel Jones plenty, but not Evan Ingram. But Evan Ingram was 5th in receptions among tight ends last year, had over 100 targets, 8th in yards, but he only had 1 touchdown. And he finished as tight end 15. And now nobody wants to draft this guy, even though, yeah, he wasn't the prospect that Kyle Pitts was, but he was a highly touted prospect, had one of the best tight end rookie years ever. Like, if you have Kyle Pitts this year, you're going to be very happy if you get what Evan Ingram did as a rookie. If he would have had, instead of 1 touchdown last year, if he would have had five measly little touchdowns, he would have finished tight end 7. If he would have had 6, he would have finished ahead of Mark Andrews. We know touchdowns are fluky. Daniel Jones threw a whopping 11 touchdowns last year. If you think Daniel Jones is throwing 11 touchdowns again, don't draft Kenny Golladay. Don't draft Kadarius Toney. Don't draft Sterling Shepard. Don't draft Evan Ingram. Don't draft anybody outside of Saquon Barkley. I think he's going to have more than 11. Even if he gets to 20 or 25, which is still an extremely low number for today's NFL, there's no reason to think Evan Ingram can't get to 5 touchdowns in this offense. And if he does, he's going to for sure be a top 10 tight end because he's targeted so much and he catches so many passes, which most of these tight ends don't do. So I actually really like Evan Ingram this year. I think he's a great value. I think he could be the guy who jumps up and everybody's like, oh yeah, I forgot Evan Ingram's actually a good player because everybody wants to focus on the drops. Deontay Johnson got benched in a half for drops, and then he had 7 targets in the second half. Drops don't matter. Stop it with the drops. I actually really like Evan Ingram this year.
I agree that the drops are way overstated here, but what I am worried about, and which is why I'm taking your advice, I'm not drafting any Giants other than Saquon Barkley, is Kenny Golladay is there. So could he get to 5 touchdowns? Yeah, absolutely. Is he going to get the same amount of targets and receptions as last year? Of course not, because Kenny Golladay is there and Saquon Barkley is back, so they actually can run the ball as opposed to last year when they couldn't even pretend to run the ball because they had Wayne Gallman and all these guys getting 3 yards in cloud of dust. And this is a team that actually has a pretty good defense. So hopefully now that they have their running back, they're not going to have to depend on Daniel Jones. God forbid. And yeah, I get it. Like, I can see Ingram, I can see a path for him, but man, I wouldn't take him unless I know the value is right. Speaking of value, I'm kind of ashamed of myself for not putting Gerald Everett in my top 12 because I've been on him all preseason talking about him. You're higher on him apparently than I am, though, as far as rankings. I don't know if I, love him as a tight end 1. I think that grabbing him as a tight end 2 is fine with upside. Maybe something happens to your starter, but I mean, you're comfortable drafting him. Speaking of where you have him ranked at tight end 11, you're comfortable waiting and grabbing him in the last round, and he's your starter from the jump?
I mean, am I comfortable with Irv Smith? No. Am I comfortable with Logan Thomas? Not at all. I mean, I'm not comfortable with any of these guys, but I understand it is what it is. And he's going to Tyler Higbee. No, I'm not drafting him at all. I think like we didn't learn from last year. This guy's going to have like one game where he catches 3 touchdowns and everybody's going to be like, yeah, Tyler Higbee. And then he's going to disappear again. Gerald Everett is a better pass catching tight end than Tyler Higbee. Now he's on an offense with Russell Wilson. I understand he's got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, so he's going to be the number 3 option. But that's still better than Tyler Higbee being a not very good pass catcher, in my opinion, on a team that, has a quarterback. Yeah, I know he targeted TJ Hawkinson a lot last year, but that's because he didn't have anything else. He's got 2 very good wide receivers. Plus, he's got some really decent deep threat wide receivers. So am I comfortable drafting Gerald Everett? Of course not. No tight end in this range feels comfortable to draft, but I like what he can do there. Just like with Adam Troutman, who I also have in my top 12, because who else are the Saints going to throw to? Traquan Smith, okay, sure, he's nice. Marquez Callaway, okay, whatever. I mean, Adam Troutman's in the perfect tight end. So he is in the Logan Thomas situation from last year, maybe even better than the Logan Thomas situation from last year, because they don't even have a wide receiver as good as Terry McLaurin on their team. So no, not comfortable drafting these guys, but you got to draft somebody. And I'd rather shoot for these guys who A, are good players, and B, are in good situations.
And we've said it time and time again, the tight end that you want is the one on a team that doesn't have many good wide receivers. And now that's the Saints, kind of underreported story, the fact all offseason that the Saints don't really have any good receivers after Michael Thomas. And now they don't have Michael Thomas. So yeah, I have Troutman. Look, definitely bumped him up. He's actually my tight end 13. So he's right behind Gesicki. And, you know, if I think about it hard enough, I'll probably bump him up and maybe move Logan Thomas out now that I think about it a little harder. Maybe Curtis Samuel will have a bigger role than I expect. But still, yeah, Troutman, I don't think you have to draft him in your top 10, but he could absolutely be a top 10 tight end in that situation. They took him in the 3rd round for a reason, to replace Jared Cook, who is now gone. So everything's going according to plan. He's going to be the tight end 1 for, well, whoever is the quarterback there. So definitely a great spot for him. And I love Everett as a sleeper as well. All right, that's our tight end rankings. Again, these are going to change, so keep up with us and we'll hip you to what has changed in the next couple of weeks before and during draft season. Fantasy football draft season is here. Keep up with us, hit that subscribe button, and check out our other positional rankings as well. All right, thanks for watching.